Hello, Phantom shipmates. It's the 4th of July, about 8:30 in the morning. I got underway from, after a far too short visit to the Madeira Islands, got underway about 12 hours ago. Pretty rough departure, I have to tell you. For those of you who leave the big island of Madeira toward the Azores, there's quite an acceleration zone if the wind is from the northeast. Quite an acceleration zone around that corner of the island. I was having gusts of over 40 knots. The only thing I could do then was just turn downwind and run with it. And I finally got spit out of that acceleration zone. 21 to 24, 7.4, 7.9, 8. Everyone knows Bavaria's can't beat to Windward. Whoa! Rock and roll. Mick Jagger would love this. I'm in a fog bank right now with about 300 meters of visibility. And there's a cargo ship about 3/4 of a mile away. He should pass just astern of me, but I don't see him. Saint-Exupéry tells us, on ne voit bien qu'avec le cœur. L'essentiel était invisible pour les jeux. That said, I could sure do with a radar right now. Oof. Maybe next year. Well, this is what it looks like in the office today. The same as it has looked the last 4 days. I'm looking at 23 knots of wind. That's what I was just a second ago. Yeah, here we go. 22 knots of wind, 45, 50 degrees. I'm doing 7 knots. A little bit uncomfortable, but no big problem. It wears you down after 3 or 4 days. I tell you, I ain't nothing but tired. I want to change my clothes, my hair, my face. But Isabel will get me through. I've got about another 24 hours to go through of this. When I removed my mast over the winter to replace my standing rigging, this is the antenna that I had at the top of the mast, VHF antenna. And I wondered why I had such a short antenna when most of the yachts I saw had antennas that looked like they were about 1 meter long. So I did a little bit of reading on it, and it has to do with the key feature of an antenna is its VHF propagation characteristic, and that's measured in dB gain. And the problem with that is that there's 4 different ways to calculate dB gain, and the marketers take advantage of that. So us laymen, we really don't know what we're buying unless you ask for some technical advice in terms of gain. You can get gains that go very high, up to 9, but that makes a very narrow beam because our radios are limited to 25 watts. So if you make a very narrow beam, it'll go further because it's very directed. But if the boat rocks back and forth like this, then you're shooting your beam up into space. Whereas if you have a gain of 0, it's a very broad beam, maybe doesn't propagate quite as far, not as much power going out, but when the boat rocks, your signal is still being received wherever you go. So the recommended dB gain for sailboats, I believe, is between 0 and 3 dB. So that's what I have. Now I have to admit, I was not dissatisfied with this antenna, but I had a sample size of 1. I had nothing to compare it with. Was I missing communications, or was I not transmitting far enough? I don't know. So anyway, I put a new fitting on. This is called a PL259. There's a special technique for attaching these, but there's plenty of YouTube videos to show you how to do that. So if ever I lose my mast now, I'll just go secure this somewhere aft, plug this into my radio, and I'll be back in business. Now, if you don't have one of those, what I had always done, I thought it was unsafe to be at sea without a spare radio, so a spare antenna, in case you lose your mast. So I just went to one of the marine stores and I bought this. It's inside here. It's an antenna that you just do the same thing and plug it in. And I remember I was out with a friend one day, and he was about 10 miles away, and I said, let me test my new antenna, my emergency antenna, and that's when I discovered that the antenna I bought only worked on one frequency, 156.8, which is channel 16. So if you're going to get a spare emergency antenna, I'd suggest that you consider getting one that covers the spectrum of marine frequencies, and not just one, especially channel 16 only. Anyway, that is the sum total of my knowledge about VHF antennas. An example of when dredging at sea is not signified by red over white over red. So this is the grip I've just downloaded. You see I'm here at this green spot and I'm going up to the Azores Islands here. That's another 350 miles or so. And you can see I'm in where it's 20 knots coming this direction. Of course, as the boat advances that direction, it drives the wind forward, the apparent wind. And that 15 to 20 knots of wind, the time for the next 3 or 4 days, it's just going to follow me in. As I go in, it's just going to come with me all the way into the islands. So I'm not going to have a smooth ride all the way in. I don't care. This is fun. So again, this is me leaving Madeira. Now the wind is coming this direction. You can see I've purposely angled up to toward the north, almost close hauled as much as I could, so I could get a more favorable wind angle when I finally turn in like this. Probably at dawn tomorrow I'll do that, and that actually will give me 10 degrees more favorable of an angle coming in. So the apparent wind angle will be I think it was actually 11 degrees less when I turn in, so it'll make it a little bit smoother of a ride to finish off. Other things I want to show you very quickly concerning quality of life aboard. Look at this. For those who don't know, this is called a lee cloth. It's the most comfortable place on the boat to sleep in rough weather, is in the middle of the boat and down as low as you can get. But look what's this. Again, I hope you can see. That's water that's come through. And every boat has a leak somewhere. A small, just a tiny leak. And what's happening is somewhere in one of the deck fittings up above, out here, somewhere a deck fitting somewhere, and it's not the chain plate because the chain plate is dry. A little bit of water, when the waves come over the top of the boat, a little bit of water comes down into here, drips down into here, and then with the capillary effect, it soaks the mattress. And that's my sleeping space. This is the life. Where are you going to sleep tonight? One other thing I want to show you. This is what I call a technical term, my comfort meter. And I find that anything below 15 degrees angle of heel is comfortable. You can walk around, you can cook, you can do everything. As soon as it gets above 15 degrees and it's rocking and rolling there, life becomes much more demanding. Obviously, if it's just going to last for an hour or two, you don't care. But this has been 4 days of that. That's very fatiguing. It really wears you down. So you feel a bit tired all the time because of that. Because you always got to be holding on or leaning up against something, and you slide around, and then you open a cupboard, and all things come tumbling out. It's just mentally and physically a bit frustrating when it's like this. So 15 degrees is my magic number. I'm comfortable up to then. Above then, I'm not. And so then what do? Well, the first thing you do is you pop the boom bang. Then second thing is you ease the sheets out a little bit, try to flatten the boat. And the third thing you can do is put in reefs. So I've done all of that except put in the third reef. I haven't put in the third reef yet. I mean, it's only 23, 21, 23 knots of wind. The third reef is meant more for 30 knots and plus. So. Well, I'm entering the final full day of this passage from Madeira to the Azores. About 550 miles this stretch. And I tell you, it wasn't particularly easy. I mean, it's easing up just a little bit now. There's still pretty good seas out there. It's been rock and roll all the way. And I remember my first passage to the Azores 3 years ago. And I remember at that time that writing Azores in my logbook was an earned privilege, not a gift received. And I think I'm going to write the same thing this time. This has not been an easy passage. So, I'm feeling comfortably numb and looking forward to making landfall. Arrival at 4 o'clock in the morning at Ponta Delgada in the Azores. Welcome to the Azores. This is where I landed last night about 4 o'clock in the morning. Ponta Delgada. Praise be.